So I did a thing, if you can't tell. What it is that you're looking at is the start of a map. A map for Matthew. I'm not really going to go into why I'm mapping Matthew yet, nor am I going to address what I've begun to discover from mapping out Matthew. What I am going to talk about, though, is my source for mapping out Matthew for now. The core source. I'm sure there'll be later ones to come on out. But this is the New Living Translation Holy Bible. Officially published in 1999. And this Bible is unique. It's a collaboration effort between a number of evangelical Protestant groups. It has its sources and things that it's republishing that are due to copyright for others. All these things. So, what's unique about this Bible is that, unlike other ones, it doesn't use formal equivalents for its translation. Formal equivalents can be described according to this theory. The translator attempts to render each word of the original language into the receptor language and seeks to preserve the original word order and sentence structure as much as possible. The second one is called dynamic equivalence or functional equivalence. The goal of this translation theory is to provide in the receptor language the closest natural equivalent of the message expressed by the original language text. Bit of a mouthful there. So, what they're saying is they're trying to convey the same message that was conveyed from reading out loud the text in the original language. So they're trying to not just say the same things in the same order, but just convey the same message and emotions from the story. It has problems with that, obviously. Because their point is to maintain the meaning and the style, where that might change some words. Some that I disagree on, such as it calls the beast dragon thing spitting the water out in Job a crocodile, which is absurd, and it calls the other one a hippo, one of the beasts with a hippo. So I disagree with those things, but for the most part they're trying to just give the same style and meaning ultimately. So focusing on these little intricate details maybe on this Bible isn't best, but when you're trying to understand the message to be delivered in the most similar way as the original text, I find it very useful and compelling. Such a translation attempts to have the same impact on modern readers as the original had on its own audience, as they put here. Guess I should have stuck it up there when I was reading, but I'm just doing this off the cuff. It's going to be a short vid. So we have this Bible that's translating from a bunch. Where are the sources? The sources that this Bible uses are right here. The translators of the Old Testament use Masoretic texts of the Hebrew Bible as their standard texts. They used the edition known as Biblia Heracia Staragarcia with its up-to-date textual apparatus, a revision of Rudolf Kiff's Biblia Hebracia, Stuart, 1937. The translators also compared the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Septuagint, yeah, gotta pronounce that right, the Septuagint, and other Greek manuscripts, the Samaritan Pentateuch, okay, I'm not even going to try with it, the Syriac Peshitta, and the Latin Vulgate, and any other versions of manuscripts that shed light on textual problems. So they used pretty good sources for their Old Testament work, but we don't really care about that. We're going to be discussing the New Testament. It is a map about Matthew, nonetheless. The translators of the New Testament used the two standard editions of the Greek New Testament. The Greek New Testament, published by the United Bible Society's Fourth Revised Edition, 1993, and Novum Testamentum Graece, edited by Nessel and Allende, 27th edition, 1993. These two editions, which have the same text, but differ in punctuation and textual notes, represent the best in modern textual scholarship. So they got some pretty decent sources, very good ones for the Old Testament. I haven't really looked too much into the New Testament sources, but at least they're doing it in Greek, which makes sense, historically speaking. Why do this? They tell us why they chose to use a functional equivalence rather than a formal equivalence, and they give an example here. A thought-for-thought translation, prepared by a group of capable scholars, has the potential to represent the intended meaning of the original text even more accurately than a word-for-word translation. There's, as they put here, same impact, modern readers. That's what they want. So their goal is to impact the readers. And there's it can. Here's an example. This is illustrated by various renderings of the Hebrew word hesed. This term cannot be adequately translated by any single English word because it can connote love, mercy, grace, kindness, faithfulness, loyalty. A mouthful. It can mean any one of these things. The context, not the lexicon. Must determine which English term is selected for translation. So that's a really good example of one, but that would definitely have more to deal with the Old Testament. An example of why this is important in the New Testament is right here with Luke. Many words and phrases carry a great deal of cultural meaning that was obvious to the original readers, but needs explanation in our own culture. For example, the phrase, They beat their breast. Luke 23:48. In ancient times meant that people were very upset. In our translation, we choose to translate this phase dynamically. They went home in deep sorrow. In some cases, however, we have simply illuminated the existing expression to make it immediately understandable. For example, we might have expanded the literal phrase to read, they beat their breast in sorrow. So I hope you can see why this form of translation is useful, especially when we get to silly phrases like they beat their breast, and now you need an explanation for what's going on. And that's why I enjoy this Bible, but also because it was my first Bible. So I hope you guys can enjoy it too, and we'll have fun mapping it out together. And I hope to include others from both Orthodox and Catholicism for their New Testament Gospels mapping context and details. So I've been the King's Fool, and you guys have a good one.